One thing that I was asked to mention is that after this session, in the room behind us, there are refreshments. So you may be interested in that. And I believe there are also tables in there from a number of the organizations that are speaking throughout the day, where you could find more information about volunteering, helping, participating with many of the groups that are here being discussed, and as well as a few others. My name is Todd Manwaring. I'm the Managing Director of the Melvin J. Ballard Center for Economic Self-Reliance and the Peary Social Entrepreneurship Program here at Brigham Young University. Our two programs are the hub for social innovation activities here. We're focused on, in our case, finding and connecting with organizations who are involved in cutting-edge activities that will lead to the next new best practice that other organizations will adopt. Today, this panel will be talking specifically about how to volunteer or work for a nonprofit. And each of these presenters, as I just introduce you to them, I'm going to take specific time. It'd be great if you pulled out from the packet that you got. Did most people get a packet? There's a bio section in there. And if what you're interested in is volunteering and working for a nonprofit, I think it's very useful to hear the life path of many of the presenters here today. And so I think you might want to take notes, notice some of what they describe, and then obviously take notes in their presentation. So I'm going to introduce each of them first, and then we'll turn some time over to Jen. Jen Gonnelly, sitting next to me, is the co-president of the League of Women Voters here in Utah. She grew up in Salt Lake City and attended Utah State University with coursework emphasis in business administration. So local. She worked as a hotel manager and computer systems analyst in Yellowstone National Park for 12 years. After Yellowstone, she became the worldwide head of user interface design for Silverline Technologies, with staff in the US, UK, and India. After a layoff in 2001 and a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis in 2000, she made the decision to do what she loves and become a full-time activist. So notice the path and the different kinds of things she's become involved in. Her experience includes lobbying on a national level for the National MS Society, serving on the Wasatch Regional Coordination Council for Community Transportation, Committee for Accessible Transportation, and Government Relations Committee of National MS Society, Utah Southern Idaho chapter. She served as a co-legislative director of the League of Women Voters for Utah for 6 years and has been serving as co-president since 2013. She mentions that she's married to the love of her life, a wonderful man from Ireland with two, I don't know how to say that, Cairn Terriers, who she treats as loving children. She loves to cook. Next to her is Nancy Basinger, president and CEO of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. She started serving in this position just this past January. Previous to this, she spent 12 years working at the University of Utah, first as an assistant professor of nonprofit management and in the Master of Public Administration program, and second, and more recently, as the faculty director of their great Benyon Community Service Center, one of the foremost centers of its kind in the United States. She began her career as a part-time bookkeeper at a nonprofit in India while completing her undergraduate degree, and has been employed by or volunteering in the nonprofit sector ever since. I think that's something key to notice in her bio. She continues to teach in the Nonprofit Academy for Excellence certificate program at the U and serves on the advisory board of University Neighborhood Partners. She holds a PhD from the University of Georgia and a Master of Public Administration and bachelor degrees from Indiana University. Next to her is Bill Holterstrom, President and CEO of the United Way of Utah County. Bill has been helping and serving individuals and families improve their communities throughout North America and overseas for more than 30 years. He began his career working at the Utah Special Olympics, where he was a project director. He soon accepted a position at United Way of Utah County, and 2 years later was promoted to its president and CEO, the position that he holds now. He's distinguished himself as a recognized leader and trainer in the areas of volunteering, board governance, nonprofit leadership, community building. In the past 30 years, he's conducted hundreds of workshops and trained and consulted with thousands of individuals in the U.S., Canada, and Ghana. He also, as many of the bios read, serves on a number of different community activities outside of his work. He served as vice chair of America's Service Commissions, a national nonprofit that works to improve national service and volunteering. He has served as vice chair of the Utah Commission on Volunteers and as co-chair of the Utah County Homeless Coordinating Committee. He serves on the Hogle Zoo Board, Intermountain Health Care, Mountain Led Head Start boards. He and his wife Tammy are the parents of 2 children who might be like Cairn Terriers, but we don't know.
I hope not.
And last, to your right, is Mila Dutton. Mila is the executive director of the Community Action Services Group here in Utah County. She's been with them in the food bank since 1979. She served as the executive director there since 1990. She's committed her professional career and volunteer time to partnering with others to build self-reliance in families and within the community. She believes in the ability and capacity of people who are living in poverty and the community to overcome challenges and bring about positive change. She's had the honor of working with a dedicated team of staff, board, and many volunteers who come and participate in her programs. Together, they have worked on many issues impacting poverty and have seen a great deal of success. She also serves on a variety of community boards for the purpose of promoting concerns and needs of low-income families. She was born in Southern California, graduate of San Diego State University, and she's been a resident of Utah Valley since 1979 when she started working at Community Action Services. She's single, loves to read, loves BYU football, and loves to volunteer. I think, again, what you're going to sense from each of our presenters is this is their life, the discussion of this topic. It isn't just their position that they have at the current location that they're at, but this is something that each of them has lived in being a volunteer, being involved, and working at a number of nonprofits. We're going to give each of them about 10 minutes to share some perspectives, and then we'll have a discussion with the audience after that. So, Jen.
Well, first of all, let's see. Can you hear me now? Oh, there we go. First of all, how many have heard about the League of Women Voters? Oh, I see a couple of hands. I have a lot of work to do. The League of Women Voters was an organization that was formed on February 14th of 1920. Women wanted the vote, and we worked very hard for it. And in February of 1920, it was coming to fruition. And 3 organizations met, and they realized that suffrage wasn't beyond their reach, and it was going to happen. And those 3 organizations joined together for the next step. The next step was to make sure that women always had suffrage, but everyone always had suffrage, that the vote is important, that in our country, that the way we change the world is by voting. And they joined together to teach women what they needed to know to vote and to make sure they knew how to vote. And then that has grown in the last 95 years to our role. The League of Women Voters still exists. We're a 95-year-old organization that works to ensure that every citizen of the United States has easy and rightful access to their vote, and that they have the information they need to vote with their own heart. The League of Women Voters is an entirely nonpartisan organization, which means we neither endorse nor oppose any candidate for any office. But what I want to do is impart to you the learning and the knowledge it takes for you to get involved in politics and in government. Because governance is what rules our lives. We change the world by looking at policy and making sure that our government sets policies that are good for everyone and that everyone has the right to vote. I'd like to say that the right to vote is no longer in danger, but it is every year made harder to vote, to get out to vote, because there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that guarantees the vote for every citizen. Each state does it differently, and some states make it more difficult than others. So it's my role to make sure that you still, no matter where you live in the United States, have that option. We also work to empower women. We are a position-based organization that empowers women. We serve on a group called Real Women Run, which empowers women to learn the reasons they want to run for office and want to get involved. So, it was once said that all politics are personal, and this is true. So every time the government comes out and makes a new rule, it will affect you. Rules are made every day, whether you participate or not. In the Utah State Legislature, they're made for only 45 days between January and March. So it's a very condensed. All the laws in Utah are made during that time, but on the federal level, they're made every day. New laws are made on the city level, sometimes every day. If you sit back and don't participate, then we have only ourselves to blame. So I want to make sure that people have the power to do that. Do you want me to take the entire 10 minutes or wait for questions?
You could either one.
I'm actually going to pass to Nancy now.
Okay.
Okay, one more. You don't have to hold it.
I might use yours. Hello. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure that I'm smart enough to work the mic, so I'm just going to borrow Jen's. It could be broken. We're just going to go with that. So I want to spend just a second talking about Big Brothers Big Sisters, and then really talk about, I guess, how I got involved in the nonprofit sector, and maybe give a little bit of advice, probably not too sage. So Big Brothers Big Sisters of Utah is an organization that provides volunteer one-on-one mentors to disadvantaged kids from all over the state. Last year we served 1,123 children between the ages of 6 and 18, most of them from single-parent households, and most of them living in poverty. We do this because we believe that mentoring changes lives, and that having a stable volunteer mentor in your life for at least 12 months really makes a difference in how you succeed in education, your emotional well-being, and your ability to avoid risky behaviors. And I am actually tabling at the room next door where the refreshments are, and I would love to talk to all of you about being a big brother or a big sister after the panel. So just a few words about how do you get involved with a nonprofit. For me, I've always been a volunteer. I've been a volunteer through various groups and as an individual pretty much my whole life. And I'm sure many of you have had a lot of different volunteer experiences at this point, and hopefully lots of you are at YServe. But I didn't get really passionate about the nonprofit sector until I went to work for the sector. Seeing nonprofits from the inside and really understanding how they could impact people's lives is what changed my career path. As an undergraduate at Indiana University, I was an accounting major. I was pretty sure I was going to be a CPA for the rest of my life. And I took a part-time job to help pay for college at a nonprofit that served people with developmental disabilities. And I completely changed my career trajectory and started studying about nonprofit organizations, and eventually got my PhD, as you heard, so that I could think about and teach about and do research on the nonprofit sector and how to maximize the benefit that nonprofits provide in the lives of our communities. I think there's three really important things that I would encourage you to think about as you consider getting involved in the nonprofit sector. The first is, what are you passionate about? What kinds of things do you really care about in your own life and within your own value system? I think that taking a volunteer position, as many of us do, because it looks good on our resume and we're about to graduate from college, is an admirable thing. And sometimes it transforms your perspective on the world. But most often it does so if you pick something that you're already passionate about. Excuse me. And so I, as an accounting major, you might imagine, those of you who are studying business, I needed to volunteer because I needed to have it on my resume, and I took a position as a volunteer at a nursing home that was in the community where I went to school. And I was the recreation leader every Saturday for all the residents at the nursing home. I'm glad that there are people who are passionate about senior citizens. I have to confess, I was not one of them. It was the least fun volunteer position I have ever had in my life. And I've had a lot of volunteer positions. And it wasn't something I was passionate about. It was something I was doing, maybe not for the greatest reasons. And it didn't really transform me. But when I started working with people with disabilities and when I started working with kids, I was a Girl Scout leader and I was a big sister. That's really where I found my passion and the connection to people that was fulfilling for me, and that made me want to do what I was doing. So first, look for your passion. Second, you have to try things out. Maybe you don't actually even know what you're passionate about. I'm not sure that I knew that I didn't love working with senior citizens before I did it for a little while and then found it wasn't so inspiring. There are lots and lots of, in the state of Utah alone, there's more than 8,000 nonprofits that you could volunteer with. And so you need to think about what you want to do, and sometimes that means exploring. So go with a group of friends, spend a Saturday volunteering, try out a few different activities, a few different ways of volunteering. You might love stuffing envelopes. If you've never done it, you might not know that you love stuffing envelopes. Jen needs people to stuff envelopes for her mailers, right?
Register people to vote,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Get out the vote, right? You might love going door to door and talking to people passionately about registering to vote. You might love working at the food bank and helping to stock shelves. So go try a few things. Just do it, right? Just get out and volunteer and figure out what you love. And then lastly, try never to volunteer at a nonprofit that doesn't actually need you or want you. At the Benyon Center, I constantly worked with nonprofits through service learning courses where the nonprofit said to me, yes, we'll figure something out for them because we want to help you, right? And I said to the nonprofit, no, if you don't need them, somebody else does, right? So when you volunteer, ask why they need you, ask how they need you, ask how somebody with your particular skill set and value set can really make a difference at that organization. Because if it's not a good fit, you're not going to stay because you're not going to like it. And they're going to waste a lot of money training you and getting you ready to be a volunteer. And they're going to waste a lot of staff time thinking about how to fit you into, help you fulfill your 4 hours of volunteering for your current class. Uh-oh. That was a new form of dropping the mic.
Don't notice anything here.
Just, yeah. Pay no attention to the man behind the, thanks. And then the second thing that I was asked to talk about is what is it like to be involved? And so I think for me, the reason that I have spent my entire career in the nonprofit sector or teaching about nonprofits is that I'm somebody who really thrives on having an intrinsic reward from what I'm doing. I wouldn't say no to a great salary, but it's not what motivates me. It's not why I get up in the morning. I get up in the morning every day loving what I do, particularly for the last 2.5 months, because I'm really motivated to make a difference in the lives of kids in Utah. And I think if you are somebody who feels very motivated by intrinsic rewards, then the nonprofit sector might be a good fit for you as a career. If you're somebody who is really a little more motivated by external rewards, then all of us who work in the nonprofit sector really want you to participate as donors and volunteers. But it's probably not a great career for you. And then secondly, I think that one of the things, what it's like to be so involved in the nonprofit sector, and one of the things I love most about it is I'm surrounded by amazing people. The people who work at my organization, the people who are served by my organization, the volunteers who come 12 hours every month to work with their little sister or little brother are amazing people. They are there because they love kids and they want to make a difference in their community. And so that, for me, is the right place to be. If I get to spend my whole day with people who are really nice and really love to change the world in a positive way, that is also rewarding for me, and it's one of the things that I love about being so involved in the nonprofit sector. So that's my advice for what it's worth.
I don't know the secret to that.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me from that? Let's try it again, because neither one of those strategies seems to work. Let's try to hold that longer. Now can you hear me? Only if I hold it.
Looks like that when you...
If I hold it, can you hear me? You can hear me now. Like a commercial. Pleasure to being with you, by the way. Some great thoughts and perspectives. I might add, Nancy almost stole my complete outline here of brilliant thoughts, so she's right. Both of them are right. Let me give you just a couple more random thoughts then, and a little bit less structured with that in mind. Couple just cautions first about our sector. Most of you, if you've talked to your parents, say, I'm really interested in going to the nonprofit sector, most of them kind of hear that, oh, great. The world's still afraid of our sector as far as whether we can actually pay the bills and be independent. And I'm telling you, you can. I had to tell a quick story that my father, before he passed away at age 89, 3 or 4 years ago before he passed away, I got an honorary doctorate from UVU down the street here. And my father, in his great wisdom at around age 86, said, son, we've been worried about you most of your life. We think you might make it now. So if you're trying to find a way to get great affirmation from your parents, this may not be the sector for it. No. Am I right on that one? But it's a great sector. Let me just share with you a few thoughts about the nonprofit sector, both from volunteering and working. Her point about finding places where you need it, I have a more simple way of saying it. If you have to stand in line to serve, find a shorter line. If all you're doing is displacing another volunteer, find another place to volunteer. If you're trying to find a place to go, I mean, it's a simple example. If you want to go feed the homeless on Christmas Eve, that's one of the most popular volunteer business. I mean, I could make a fortune if I could make $1 off of every person who called me on that question. So don't just volunteer in the popular places the news features. If you have to stand in line to volunteer, find a shorter line. On the volunteer side of volunteering first, let me talk about some issues and impact to be thinking about. There's episodic volunteering and there's sustained volunteering. The less time you're volunteering at an organization, the less trust they have in you, the less skills you can share. So if you're going someplace and volunteering and next week you want to volunteer somewhere else the following week, we can give you very high-level skills such as sorting, sweeping, stuffing envelopes, all those very collegiate level skills we can have you do if you've done it, if you're going once. Any of these organizations, if you say, I'm willing to commit for a year, will love you. I realize that in Studentville, life starts over every 4 months. And I realize that, and we almost accept that fact, but the longer you can commit, the deeper your experiences will be and the deeper the contribution you can make. Our world does not start over every 4 months, and nor does those that we're serving start over every month. So the longer you can commit, the greater trust we will give you and the greater responsibility you will have to be able to share your skills. Which ties me to the next concept here that ties both into volunteering and even careers in this vision. I have lots and lots of people who come to my door, send me resumes, emails, etc., who have phenomenal passion. I have a lot of people who send me resumes and volunteering opportunities who have phenomenal skills. I need both that are aligned. I don't need just your heart. I don't need just your mind. I need your heart and mind tied together to make a difference. So if someone comes to me and says, I want to volunteer because I really love people. Great. What can you do? Well, I love people. I want skills that come with that heart. That's where you can have the impact. That skills may be public policy, maybe speaking, maybe grant writing. It may be that you're really good at working with teenagers. It may be whatever. I need your skills and your heart. And that's true both with with both the career side of it and the volunteerism side. Let me switch over now and talk about how you get into this business. Most of us in our sector started in, I would bet you if I asked all this group when they were even in high school, when I grow up, I want to, none of us are where we thought we were going to be when we grow up. When I was here at BYU, where you now have the Center for Service and Learning, we had an older version of that. I spent my life in the Wilkinson Center doing that. My grades show that I spent a lot of time on the service side instead. And when I graduated, I was going to work for Special Olympics for 2 years and then get a real job. When I went to United Way, I really thought I would spend 2 years and then get a real job. I have now been there 31 years, approaching 32 years. I have still not had that real job. But I have literally loved every minute, almost every minute of my career. That's a few minutes that are bad here and there, but I worked with Todd for years, and Todd knows I'm a hyper guy still. I still love this work. I love the ability to make a difference and the ability to channel other people's passions and energies. So one of the key points in this sector is to realize that you can't do it alone, but that you're leveraging, your job is to leverage other people's talents and resources to change the world. So if you're a person who thinks that they have all the answers, no, this is the wrong sector for you. If you're the person who can bring others around and leverage your voice, leverage your time, leverage your resources, this is the right sector for you. In summary, I would just kind of tell you is find a way to make a difference. As was mentioned earlier, I think that civic engagement and being involved in volunteerism should be a part of everyone's life. Not that you're obligated to do it, but you just always want to find a way to do it. For some of you, you're going to make a greater contribution by being remarkably successful financially. You can then come back and serve on boards and donate money. For others, you're going to make a difference by being in the sector. Both are needed. If the whole world only wanted to work in our sector, we would have no resources to run our sector. So we, I think, collectively love the people who are successful, have passion, whose businesses align with our work. That's fantastic. In summary, what I want to just tell you is keep that restlessness and the desire to make the world better. And start with that restlessness to make the world better with your next door neighbor. It's another thing I've learned over the years, that is, if you cannot serve the person who lives next door to you, you're somewhat worthless when you come to some of our organizations. If you can't serve the person who lives next door to you, frankly, I think you're going to be dangerous in a third world country. So start local, start with the person next door, start serving when you buy your Slurpee at the 7-Eleven. Are you finding a way to serve that person around the counter? Are you building that person to become more financially independent, et cetera? So find ways to serve formally with us, but to make it part of your life, that your life is designed to love thy neighbor, to help those around you have a better life. If you can't do it here, you're not going to be able to do it somewhere else. So thank you. Mila.
Hello, testing. Yeah, there it is. Okay, I won't sing. Thank you. And I will add bits and pieces and add to the wonderful things that have been said here. I've been in the nonprofit world a little bit longer than Bill. He actually volunteered for us, I remember. When he was a college student, he came and helped at our agency. A little bit about my trajectory. I'm a math major, English and math majors and a psychology minor, and I was going to teach math. I did for a year and got out because I was not good for the students and they were not good for me. It was not a good match. But thankfully, as I was going through San Diego State and the local junior college, I managed a little tiny Red Cross chapter. And that's where I fell in love with the nonprofit world of working with fabulous board members and volunteers and really seeing, I was live every day, just as I am today, Been in with our organization alone for 35 years, and every day is wonderful. Every day I get to work with people and volunteers who really care, and volunteers who come episodically and help sort food in the food bank, and those who commit a semester in an internship. So just a couple of additional thoughts. In the community action world, there's a lot of us across the country, so wherever you go home, you'll find a community action agency somewhere. We also do need people with passion and skill set, but when you come, the degree that you have, I really, in our world, we will take that skill and that talent and that heart and place where there's a good fit. So you don't need to come with social work background and so forth, even to work with the families that we work with. So you can think outside the box. As you're looking around in terms of volunteering, go and volunteer different places, especially those of you who are considering going into the nonprofit world and an MPA, that kind of work. You will be choosing a cause or several causes in your lifetime to work for as you want to work in the nonprofit world. Really important to go and volunteer to find out if that works for you. Like you found, Nancy, seniors wasn't your thing. Well, teenagers and high school students wasn't my thing. So really important to really keep in mind and where you are out there working. Couple of other thoughts. I'm going to talk a little bit about us because Community Action Services and Food Bank, we do have a full range of volunteer opportunities, and a couple of things about some of those. We will take you episodically to come and sort food boxes if you have 5 hours or 4 hours to do for your class, but please don't come at the end of the semester. We get overrun, and we may not have a place for you. We would love someone, even in terms of helping in the food bank, to sign up for a full semester or 2 semesters. We now do, as many food banks across the country, we are now operating our food pantries in a client choice way, meaning people come and shop. They come and go through our pantry and shop for those things that they need. What a concept. We changed out only 2 or 3 years ago. And we need volunteers to assist them as they go through the shopping experience. There may be a senior, maybe someone with a disability. It is life-changing, and you do get to meet with a lot of people who have challenges, who are financially challenged, who are people living with a low income and in poverty. And it is life-changing when you give yourself that opportunity to be exposed to an individual and your neighbor down the street that you didn't know was in need. We do have internships in all of our different programs as well. There's only one internship that's paid, and that's our communications team. So if you have a communications degree and need an internship, please call. But also, you can work directly with the families we work with. You can also work in doing PR, grant writing, or a lot of variety of things. And nonprofits, again, welcome you and want to have that conversation with you about what is a good fit, because we are interested in making it work for both of us. When you're passionate and you care and you really get engaged, that benefits us on both sides. What else can I add? Because everything else has been... I will talk a bit about our Circles program. There's some opportunities there, materials out on the table. Circles is something we started doing just 4 years ago. It's an initiative rather than a program, in that we are working with families from generational poverty. So we're talking about a child growing up in poverty and their parents and their grandparents. And we really, as we began to take a look at working with families from generational poverty, we began to change. We learned more. Bill, you said, I learn every single day, and I'm so thankful. And in reality, the families that we serve every day teach me every day, and teach our volunteers and our staff every single day. And a bit about Circles: you can be an intern there, you can come and do childcare on Tuesday nights where we have a weekly meeting. Basically, Circles initiative is about working with a family from generational poverty and actually helping them get to 200% of poverty income. We're talking about into the middle class. And it is complex, and it is fabulous, and it's all about relationships and engaging with people and being an intentional friend and helping with the child care. So more to know. Karen will be available if you would like to know more. But part of that is the other piece that all of you spoke of, is that there's an advocacy role, that as you become passionate about individuals in the community who have challenges, there is an advocacy role and a voice that you can bring to it that really is important, both in terms of rules and policies and politics, and decisions that are made every single day that impact people's lives. For you to understand and have a deep compassion and understanding of a particular population that has challenges, and to add your voice to theirs is really important, because those barriers to succeed are significant in terms of getting out of poverty, or these many, so just to say that as you become passionate, as you get connected in the nonprofit world, be thinking outside of that in terms of, okay, this is what I do each day, but where can I add my voice to a policy decision? Where can I add my voice to theirs in order to help those who are making those life-changing decisions each day, that they're informed and as they do that? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Take a minute here. Jen wanted to add something.
Yeah, I'm afraid when I originally spoke, I get so wrapped up in what I'm doing because I really truly believe in what I'm doing that I don't talk much about myself. So I'm going to build on what was said here, and I'm going to build on what you said. We all are here because we see a need and we want to change the world. And when you see something that's not happening and something that needs to be served, there's a way to go about that. We all want a better world. If you see a need, investigate why the need isn't being handled. What isn't happening? What needs to happen? And if there's an organization that you think serves the need, investigate them. Look into them. See if they've tried to tackle the problem before. If you can't find anything, go to them and say, gosh, I see this need. Have you thought about this? And it could be one of two things. It could be that some sort of rules got to change, or that nobody's stepped up to do it yet. And we just need somebody to step up and do it. Part of the reason I got involved with politics at all was because I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I realized that the meds that would keep me walking were really, really expensive, and that not everybody could get a hold of them. And that made me really sad. And I realized it was government policy, so that's how I got into it. But you have to investigate why the need's not being served, and ask why the need's not being served, and then come up with a, what if I did this?
Yeah, are there any other comments before?
Let me piggyback on that one for a second, on a couple thoughts on that. I often joke when people ask me, like, well, how do you solve poverty? I often say, well, gee, you should have asked me 30 years ago when I got out of college, I would have had the answer then. I say that in saying that before you, and piggyback on what you just said, Jen, that before you think you need to start your own program, you actually may be much better off finding an existing program who's aligned there and add your expertise to really change the world. I realize that we're all very, very smart, bright, compassionate people, but there are other bright, smart, compassionate people out there who may just be waiting for you to join arms with them. Utah County has 1,400 nonprofits. There probably aren't 1,400 different ways of getting the job done. So to align with others who have similar belief systems and values is usually a much more efficient way than starting your own nonprofit. If you come up with a program idea that no one else has, you're probably still better off trying to run that program within the auspices of an existing nonprofit than start your own. But I might add a little very carefully, you cannot own a nonprofit. The nonprofit is a community's entity. So if you want complete power, complete authority, start a small business. But the nonprofit sector collaborates, works with others, and the ultimate goal is the betterment of the community and not the betterment of an organization.
Good. Any other comments amongst the panel? Let's open for some questions and answers. We've got about 12 minutes, and I'd love to hear some questions from the audience. I'll try to repeat them so that others in the room can hear. But what kind of questions would you have about volunteering, working for nonprofits? What's going through some of your minds?
So are all key positions at nonprofits just about doing the business
So the question is, are all paid positions at nonprofits just about dealing with the business part of the nonprofit? Who would like to tackle that a bit?
I'll take that for a second here. If you look across the way there, you'll see a hospital. That is probably the largest, other than BYU, probably the next largest nonprofit in this valley. That's a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit. There are doctors who are paid, there are nurses who are paid, there are custodians who are paid. So virtually every aspect of a nonprofit can be either direct service or part of the administration or somewhere in between.
Nancy? Yeah. Any other, do you want to ask a follow-on to that? Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, good. There was another hand that came up right when hers did. What other questions would you have? Yes, thanks.
I actually work on campus in an internship setting, helping students find, proper opportunities before they graduate. I get the question a lot. I tell them there are a lot of things they can do with a bachelor's degree in psychology, sociology, and human development, family living. My question is, after talking to some people, how much opportunity is there in the community for paid full-time employment? Or do you have to start out, volunteer and work your way up into a paid position? What's your take on that in our community?
So you in the back, could you hear her? I think her voice carried well. Okay.
I can answer for our world in community action. We do several different programs, but we do have staff turnover. Young people marry and move out of the area. And so I think that it's different at each organization. I know that we have our core staff have been around a long time like me, but we have opportunities that come open pretty often. Food bank is a food bank driver and warehouse worker is going to be very different than working with a caseworker working with families. But in reality, a caseworker working with families, you don't need the social work. You have some experience and volunteer experience, and we will train you. So for us, every nonprofit is different in terms of the level of expertise and et cetera that's needed. Someone else could probably.
Yeah. I'm trying this. Oh, there we go. It's the hold the button magic. So I would say for us, we love to hire people who have been volunteers for our organization. But our first concern is that we hire the most qualified person for that position. So if you are competing against an equally qualified person and you have ever been a big brother or a big sister anywhere in the country, you have a leg up. But if you're not qualified at first, it doesn't help you that you've been a volunteer. So
If I can piggyback on that, the nonprofit sector in Utah is smaller per capita than many parts of the country. So much bigger, thriving nonprofit sectors are found in Minneapolis or in Atlanta. There's some areas that have a much larger. A Red Cross office here has a staff of 1.5. Same size population. Boise, Idaho has a staff of 30 or 40. Same size nonprofit in Rochester, New York, Red Cross has a 3-story building. So it is a smaller sector, but there are still openings and jobs here. The compensation rates are not phenomenal here, but they're livable in most cases, and the trick to get through compensation is to climb the ladder faster so that those entry levels do not bother you as much. But there's absolutely is a sector here. You're sitting in the largest nonprofit in the valley right here, BYU. This is a nonprofit. The hospital has lots of nonprofit jobs. So in some industries, there's lots of nonprofit jobs and openings.
Jen, did you want to add anything?
Well, I was just going to say that, the nonprofit sector can be small and it doesn't always pay that well. But, we've often been told that when we do what we love, we'll never work in a day in our lives. And that is true. And I also want to put in the plug because my not-for-profit is so tiny, I have only one paid staff member. That build volunteerism into your life in general. Even if it's not in your core curriculum or what you're doing for a living, it will pay back in spades.
Okay, good. Another question? Are some of these helping? Uh-huh. Hand here in the middle.
Do all paid positions at a nonprofit require a bachelor's degree or higher?
Did everybody hear that in the back? Behind her? Okay.
Yeah, I will say, I think it's more likely that your position requires a bachelor's degree. Obviously, if you're in the management or administrative part of the organization, or it's based on the criteria of the service. So for us, to be a national affiliate with Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, most of our staff are required to have a bachelor's degree. We have a couple of positions out of our 30 employees. We maybe have 2 that don't have a bachelor's.
I have about 85 employees, and some of those driving vans around town, picking up people who need transportation. Those folks do not need bachelor's degrees. Almost everybody in my office administratively or overseeing or supervising other people would have bachelor's degrees. This is also a very competitive market. We have a disproportionately high amount of people with degrees in this area, which means that a degree is more likely to be needed because of our high number of degrees.
Just to add something to that, what about master's degrees? Is that sometimes a requirement?
I was
or-
just going to say, in fact, not only do most of my staff have bachelor's, but the vast majority have a master's.
Teaching in the MPA program, we get asked this question a lot about master's degrees. In most of our sector, still very slow to say a master's degree is required. It normally depends on the master's degree, shows us your interest and desire for the profession. And there's also an expectation of a master's degree that you should be able to climb and do more faster and climb faster. If you're going to work, for example, in a lot of positions across the street here at the hospital, they would want master's degrees for a lot of their positions. Organizations probably like mine, I have a lot of people with master's degrees, but it was never on the job description for us to have that master's degree in my organization.
Okay, any other comments there? Yeah, there was a hand in the middle. Thanks.
This might be outside the realm of where you want to talk about, but me and a friend, we've started a nonprofit organization, and we seem like the majority of the time we're running on fumes as far as trying to get donations and help and funding for what we do. Is that kind of the par for the course when you're starting? You just seem for years to run on fumes?
And again, could you over here hear what he was mentioning? Okay. Sure.
Very common scenario, the life cycle of small nonprofits, they don't last long because of that. It's why I usually give the advice of trying to find a way to partner with an existing organization and do something. We have a program, for example, that was started by a BYU student, and instead of her running their own nonprofit, she just came to us and said, can I run this program underneath you? It involves sending volunteers to the prison to have mothers at the prison read on tape, then tape, now digitally, and send the book to their kids. That program has now been going on for 10 or 11 years because this woman now the student now lives in Ireland, we just found out this week. But it was finding a way to partner with an existing group to maintain that sustainability. The problem with sustainability is someone to maintain the passion along with the vision along with the dollar resources. Very hard to do.
Part of operating a nonprofit as well is that when you do apply for and receive federal funding or state funding, there's a whole bureaucracy and rules and regs that come with that. So it's really key. I mean, joining another nonprofit and having a backbone agency to deal with all of that really takes that pressure and liability and accountability off of someone trying to start up something. It's intense, and it's gotten more intense.
If I can add to that, you want to do 2 things if you're running a not-for-profit on a very slim margin. You want to make sure that your board of directors has a solid accession plan, that you have people who are coming up in the ranks to take over, because you need to continue the passion, because you're going to live on passion for a number of years. I would also write your budgets and your plans with a stress test that if you lose 20% of your funding or 30% of your funding, how will you continue to get your job done? That stress test needs to be written very well and so someone can implement it. It'll show you when you go to fundraise for your not-for-profit, that stress test will show people that they can trust you with their money.
Right. Well, thank you all for your questions. Thanks to our panel. And as you heard from many of them, they're going to be here mingling, some of them at some of the tables, so please grab them and ask some more questions and dig in this some more. You've got a huge amount of experience here that could help in many ways. A reminder, as a professor, here at BYU, part of the aims of our education describe how we should be using our knowledge and skills to better our communities, better families around us, and solve social problems. I think it's key for each of us to really not just treat this as a place to volunteer, but treat this as, how am I going to get involved in changing and making my community a better place? What's that going to look like? And how am I going to take the skills and knowledge I have to leverage that into that kind of equation? So please take the time to do that. A reminder that there are some refreshments and that the table booths are in this room behind. And I believe, Richard, the next session starts in 10 minutes. Is that right? Okay. Thank you again to our panelists.